Acts of resistance against the Nazis were incredibly dangerous whilst Hitler was in power in Germany, especially those acts of resistance which were carried out by groups that were famously persecuted by the Nazis, such as the Jews. Today we look at one remarkable man and his direct opposition to National Socialism, which was occurring within Germany, and it saw the death and execution of one man, his wife, and around 20 of his associates. The story of Herbert Baum is an incredible one, and is a story of a direct protest and opposition to one of the most evil regimes of the 20th century. So join us today as we look at the tragic execution of Herbert Baum, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Herbert Baum was born on the 10th of February 1912 in Moschin, in the province of Posen. Posen was established as a province of the Kingdom of Prussia, and today is found in present-day Poland. Whilst Herbert was young, his family would move from Poland to Berlin, and life seemingly probably was normal at this point. He would graduate from a secondary school in Berlin, and began becoming an apprentice electrician, which would become his profession after he qualified. At around the age of 14, Herbert was established as an active member of a number of different youth groups within Berlin. Some of these youth groups were linked to communism and the political left, and also Jewish youth organisations, as Baum himself was Jewish. From 1931, he also became a member of the Young Communist League of Germany, the KJVD. This group had thousands of members, with its membership peaking during the final years of the Weimar Republic at around 50,000. The activities of the KJVD included selling party newspapers, painting slogans, putting up communist propaganda, and organising gatherings. The KJVD was a youth division of the Communist Party, but there were rifts between them. The youth group would advocate an increased use of violence against political enemies of the group, such as the Nazis. The Nazis would hate groups such as theirs, as communism was seen as a direct enemy of National Socialism, and it was something that Hitler and the Nazis wanted to expel from Germany and Europe. Communists across Nazi Germany would be rounded up, and many were initially placed in concentration or labour camps before they could find themselves executed. So life when Hitler rose to power was incredibly dangerous for Herbert Baum. He married Marianne Baum, and together with their friends they began to organise meetings in which they discussed how to deal with the threat of Nazism. Many of these meetings were held in the apartments of the members, and the circle of friends that Baum involved in these discussions was rather large. Baum was made chairman of the group known as the Baum Group, which involved around 100 young people, mostly made up of Jews. They would discuss politics and culture, but also acts of resistance against the Nazis and Hitler. One of the most important characteristics of the Baum Group was the fact it was youthful, and it also had a number of women inside of it. By 1941, the average age of the members was 22, with the youngest being Alice Hirsch, who was just 18. Only 5 members of the group in 1933 were over 21 when Hitler came into power, and the majority of the group at the time were between 10 and 13 years old. Most of the young women involved were friends or partners of the men within the group. Many who joined had looked for community and friendship, and especially solidarity, which would help them through the ordeals of Nazi Germany. The majority of people who did join the Baum Group were from Jewish youth organisations. By summer 1934, Herbert Baum had assumed the leadership of the Communist Youth Organisation in the southwest districts of Berlin. The goal of the group was to infiltrate other organisations which were close to their views, but also those who opposed their ideas. By the time the group got together and carried out different anti-Nazi actions, Jewish youth movements and communist groups had been banned by the Nazis. Initially the group would get together and listen to music, organise outings, hold poetry readings, and take part in other seemingly normal activities for youth groups. The Herbert Baum Group, or the Circle of Friends as it was known, would also go into the business of publishing and distributing anti-Nazi, pro-communist and Jewish leaflets. This was incredibly dangerous during Hitler's Germany and was considered treason. One example of this occurring is with the White Rose movement, which resulted in the executions of Sophie and Hans Scholl, who distributed anti-Nazi propaganda, and for this paid the ultimate price with their lives. The most famous action that the Baum Group would be remembered for was using violence, and in particular fire, against the Nazis in a propaganda art exhibition. On the 18th of May 1942, an anti-communist art exhibition entitled The Soviet Paradise was being held at Berlin's Lustgarten. It was to run from May the 8th, 1942 to June the 21st and had been organised by the Reich Ministry of Propaganda. In total it was visited by 1.3 million people, and the exhibition housed tent-like pavilions with photographs, images, paintings, looted objects and weapons set up over 9,000 square metres. The centrepiece of the whole exhibition was an allegedly true and original piece of art, which was in fact false, which showed Minsk in Belarus and a Soviet village in which people lived in holes in the ground. This was created to make the German population think that the Soviets were barbarians and third-rate citizens who lived in holes in the ground. It was supposed to show poverty, misery and depravity, and a need for the German people to go to war with the Soviet Union, and it justified this. A day before the 18th of May, a large amount of anti-Nazi propaganda had been distributed within the exhibition. However, on the 18th, Baum and his group were set to work. They decided to commit arson against the art exhibition, attempting to set fire to the exhibition and all of the work inside it to set a precedent. A bombing or fire was planned, and Joseph Goebbels would even write about it in his diaries. He said, "Late in the evening I was told there was a fire, probably the result of sabotage, broke out at the anti-Soviet exhibition. It was extinguished in a timely manner. One notes again that in our big cities a communist opposition, small but still not to be ignored, has established itself." Victor Klemperer would also write of the attack. "Last week an insignificant fire was set at the Soviet Paradise exhibition. It was declared to be Jewish arson, and 500 men were arrested. Of these, 30 were released, 220 placed into concentration camps, 250 were shot, and the families of the 470 who had been detained were evacuated." Goebbels would mention the reprisals, saying, "We've now discovered a club of saboteurs and assassins in Berlin. Among them are also a group who undertook the bombing of the anti-Soviet exhibition. Significantly among those are 5 Jews, 3 half-Jews and 4 Aryans. An engineer at Siemens is even among them. The bombs were manufactured partly at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute." So Baum, along with his group, had attempted to bomb the art exhibition, and it had not gone down very well. The engineer Goebbels mentioned, who worked in Siemens, was actually Herbert Baum, who had been forced into labour there. He had escaped deportation to the concentration camps by heading into the Berlin Underground and hiding out. So shortly after the attempted arson attack on the exhibition, many of Baum's group, including Herbert Baum and his wife, were arrested. Herbert Baum was locked up in Berlin, and whilst imprisoned was horrifically tortured. He was so badly beaten and tortured that he was actually tortured to death, dying on the 11th of June 1942. The Gestapo would later report his death as a suicide, but Baum's death was rather horrific and brutal, and the horrors he must have faced inside prison at the hands of the Nazis must have been devastating. Things for the Baum Group would get worse, as Baum's wife Marianne would also be executed at Plötzensee prison on the 18th of August 1942 and was guillotined to death and beheaded. So reprisals for the Baum Group were catastrophic. Because of the arson attack, their leader Herbert Baum and his wife were killed, and a huge number of the group's members were arrested, and 20 were sentenced to death. Many of the group were executed using the guillotine in Plötzensee prison in quick fashion, and many were also hanged. Many Jews, because of the arson attack, were taken away and arrested in Berlin, with estimates placing this at around 500, with half being shot immediately, with the other half being taken to various concentration camps. The next day after the attack, the Reich Association of Jews in Germany were told about the reprisals and were told that the actions were related to the attack on the exhibition. So Herbert Baum was rather influential in the resistance movement in Berlin, in particular in the Jewish and communist groups. His group gave a number of people who were outcasted and persecuted by the Nazis a sense of community, which they had lost, and their use of violence against the Nazis shows us how desperate they actually were. Baum seemed to be a charismatic leader who people could get behind and support. However, his death was at the hands of prison guards in brutal fashion, who wished to extract more information from him and pushed him too far. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.